My mom heard me trying to buy weed from somebody. I was like, what's an eighth? I remember my dad sitting down with me and he was like, make sure it just doesn't become habit. I struggled as a kid. My parents tried very hard to find something that was going to help me.
You felt like a failure?
100%. My thing in life is procrastinate, hesitate, wait to the last minute. The car that these two guys are driving goes airborne and literally slides into my brother's car, killing him instantly. This is like the turning point for me. This is the first moment I saw that drugs could change you for the better. Escaping out of this emotional moment that was so hard to comprehend as a 16-year-old kid. I decide that I'm tired of hiding who I am. I'm a very satisfied drug user. I love my life. I start stealing money, cash register at the bar I'm working at. They catch me because one night I'm not able to put any money back in their register. They actually say to me, if you go to rehab, you come back, we might be able to salvage this opportunity. And I literally was offended. I was just like, how dare you? I didn't care about the stealing of the money. Obviously I was doing that, but don't call me an addict. I got fired from 5 jobs in 30 days. All of those moments, all of the opportunities that I had gotten up to this point, every time I could put my hand up and said I need help, I wasn't ready to see myself, who I truly was. My mom came to the family program, and it was the first time that we really listened to each other. And I started to appreciate and let people love me before I could love myself. I'm going to a meeting every day. I'm going to an AA meeting, by the way. I'm an NA guy. I'm a narcotics guy. I'm a drug user. I'm not alcoholic.
Green lights and blue skies are on their way. Yeah, they're on their way.
Hey everybody, Corey Rabin here. Welcome back to Crosstalk, the #1 podcast. We've now done a survey of everybody on the earth, and we found out that this is the #1 podcast for recovery, to find out how to get sober and how to stay sober. If that's what you want, you're in the right place. I want you to subscribe, follow, and like. This will help us with our very, very complicated algorithms, and I don't even know what that means, but I'm told that's what I'm supposed to say, so I said it. So today, we have an interview of somebody. You know when you meet somebody, and sometimes you meet somebody that you know is a special person? Well, several years back, I met this guy, and I knew I wanted to be around him because I knew he was special. I knew he had a lot to give, and I was right. And now I'm going to allow him to have the stage here. Hopefully, I'm going to shut up very, very soon, and I'm going to let you hear why Max F is so special. So I want to welcome Max F to Crosstalk.
Thank you, Corey. It's a pleasure to be here.
Thanks so much for being here. We're on a beautiful winter Sunday afternoon. Saturday. Yeah, I see. I get the Saturday and Sundays mixed up still.
100%. It's for me, it's just all Monday. The weekends fly by.
They go.
Yes, I feel like I've just been living one single day for the last, I think, 6 years since I started having kids.
Right. Well, we're going to get into all of that stuff.
Right. I can't wait.
So we're here today. Basically, I want you to just tell us all about your story, and hopefully I'm going to learn something. I know you guys are going to learn something as well. And tell us a little bit about how things started in the life of Max.
Yeah, so I'm originally from Southern California, from LA. I have 2 brothers, mom and dad. My dad is originally from Brooklyn, Bensonhurst to be exact. So a New York boy that came out west. So it's very apropos that I'm a West Coast boy that came out east, of which I never thought was going to happen. I definitely like to gear more towards warmer weather, warmer climate. So I'd imagine when I was a kid that I'd be living in Hawaii by now, but clearly that's not what's happened. Well,
if you wait a few years, that may actually just happen.
Yeah, I live very close to the water. I'm very nervous about the coastal flooding and global warming. So we'll see how that turns out in a few years. So I hope I have at least 10 to 15 before I start seeing that occur. But yeah, my dad was in the music business. We lived out in LA and had a very nice childhood. My dad was very well off. He was very successful in business. Looking around all these paintings, you would have loved him. He had work was everything for him. He definitely was somebody that appreciated the finer things, and something that I definitely grew up being very close to was just getting out and living life and enjoying yourself. Like I said, I had two brothers. My older brother, Michael, who's still with us, he lives in Ohio now, about a 3-year age difference. And then I had an older brother, his name was Josh. He was about 6 years older than I was, half brother from my dad's previous marriage. He unfortunately passed away when I was 16. And that's, definitely can get into that when the time comes for this. But yeah, so grew up in LA, and like so many of us, in sobriety, I definitely have those feelings that a lot of us share, which are the not fitting in and, feeling very not a part of the community that I was hanging out in, friends and things like that. But yeah, growing up for me was a very lavish childhood. A lot of trips to Europe. I spent a lot of time here in New York, and, going along with living a very, enjoying life type of attitude, I got to experience a lot of things as a kid that not a lot of my friends were getting to experience. So things like staying at the Ritz Hotel, 7 or 8 years old in Paris, and, having a few beers in the bar, smoking cigars with my dad, enjoying, the childhood that, like I said, a lot of my friends and, people back home didn't really understand. So I used to come home from in kindergarten and literally be bragging about all of this, and the school's calling my parents and saying, is this legit? Is he smoking cigars and drinking wine in Paris?
And how young were you when this was going on?
Between 6 and 8 years old.
Wow.
Sorry, Mom, if I'm getting some of the years mixed up there, but that's how I remember it. And yeah, so, my dad treated me like a son, but also as a friend. And that's how we traveled. And so I have these incredible memories of going to, like I said, Paris, coming to New York City. When I was 14, my dad took me out of middle school for 3 weeks and took me to Italy with him, and did a week in Venice, Florence, and Rome, and ate at these incredible restaurants, and, lived a life as if I was, 30 years old, but I was 50. So a lot of really fun memories, but obviously, nobody at that time, I think, could see, 20 years down the road of where this was going to go. But all that experience didn't necessarily aid in my journey to recovery. Definitely, I think, kickstarted the journey downward, a lot earlier on than I think I might have been exposed to, some of the other people, that I was hanging out with.
So I'm curious, did your dad have any of the addiction, the isms, or was he just a high life kind of guy who had a limit that he wouldn't cross?
He had, I think, way before he ever had kids, he had a life, that was probably in that area. But, when I was growing up, it wasn't necessarily something I saw early on. He definitely had his struggles in the 2000s, when my brother passed away, to cope with that pain of losing a child.
Right.
But until that point, no, my dad could keep it together and was the life of the party. And, I got to experience that, in my youth, which at the time was awesome. And then, hindsight is still awesome.
Right.
It's really great.
Not many people get to experience a childhood like that. And yeah, the downside of it was that there wasn't the guardrails in place to, facilitate some learning about how to live when you get older. But boy, must have been fun.
It was incredible. Being in Paris with my dad, going down to the Ritz Hotel bar and walking in, and the bartender saying, "The usual, sir," to me, which was a 2 more beer, and some olives on the side. So, that was incredible. I do have a memory of coming to New York during one of my dad's conventions, and, I think it's not untrue to say that I was, having sips of wine and things like that, but I definitely stole drinks. So like if I was at a party or anything like that, I was definitely, if you left a half a glass of like wine, whiskey, beer, anything, I would definitely grab it and start chugging. And I remember being in New York for this convention, up to my normal antics, and then literally being so drunk that I was nursing a coffee at like the Palm restaurant, like with like my dad's friends, like, at, maybe 10, between 10 and 12. And I think that's probably the first cup of coffee I ever had, and it's like so ingrained in my memory because it was just black coffee, which I don't drink. And the bitterness, I can still taste the bitterness of that. But just the idea that like I'm a kid and I'm trying to sober up at a dinner, it's just like, it's ridiculous when you think about it. But I loved it. I struggled as a kid. I like to always remind myself that I failed first grade. And the emotional outburst that I had was, really intense. So trying to process the emotions I felt, I wasn't an easy kid. I was the youngest of 3 and I was a pain in the butt.
When you say you failed first grade, you repeated it?
Luckily I didn't have to repeat it. The only reason why I think is because I was taken out of the school a year later. So I was put somewhere else that was supposed to be better suited, a better environment for a kid like me. I struggled to pay attention. I was, born in 85, in the 90s, Ritalin, ADD, I'm one of those kids. Mm-hmm. And, my parents tried very hard to find something that was going to help me get on the right track. And my older brother is a really smart guy and he was really great in school and was able to focus, apply himself and do all that good stuff. And I felt like I was the opposite. And I kind of was.
You felt like a failure?
100%.
Comparing yourself to...
Absolutely. Yeah. And it didn't help that, I was an annoying little brother. So, I wouldn't say that I was ignored or anything like that, but I definitely made it easy for my brothers to not necessarily want to just go out of their way to hang out with me. So, typical youngest kid syndrome, ratted on my brothers when, they did bad stuff. Like, it's just annoying.
Right. You were your mom and dad's favorite?
I don't think I was my mom and dad's favorite. I couldn't say of which any of my brothers are the favorite. I don't think we were singled out in that way. We all had a different relationship with my parents, especially my dad. I've heard my brother speak recently about some of his favorite memories of my dad, stuff that I'd never heard before. And I realized during that moment that, again, we've all had a really interesting separate experience growing up with him. And, there was a special singled out moment for all of us that we all got to experience on many different occasions.
I noticed the difference between how each of you spoke. Recently, I had the honor of listening online to your dad's funeral service and listen to both your brother and yourself talk about your dad, and the way you just came at it was different.
Yeah, 100%. My brother's an incredible public speaker, and he always has been. Really poised and put together, and something that I do admire of him. And I think later, in sobriety, I've found that in myself. But he's always had it. And he is just always put together. So it definitely is a difference. There's a contrast, but I think now that I've been able to balance out my life, we are able to balance each other out in a room like that. So that was very special. Seeing those people, by the way, like that were at that funeral, that used to work for my dad. My dad owned a really successful music promotion business. And I literally used to go around that office telling everybody they were fired. And people would be so freaked out because they'd think that I overheard a conversation that they'd come running to my dad and like, is it happening? Am I really fired? And so it was amazing to be, 38 years old standing in front of those people who remember me as this like little kid, and to be there to experience all of that.
Right. So you go to a different school,
Yep.
and what happens at the different school?
More of the same. The school that I was at was this time, they were like trailers, like schools in trailers or classrooms in trailers. It was like a really weird place. And I struggled there. My thing in life, especially as a student, is procrastinate, hesitate, wait to the last minute. It's all I did in school. So everything was always last minute, which obviously doesn't encourage a calm atmosphere, right? So my entire life is just like built on stress. Like stress is the foundation. So I struggled there. I got out of that school. My parents put me into this is going into 6th grade, went to a school called Highland Hall, which is a Waldorf school. I'm not sure if you're familiar with Waldorf education, but it's a different way of approaching, teaching. And my cousin went there at the time, and so that's how my parents knew about it. And this school is very well known now. A lot of celebrities like Melissa Etheridge, like her kids go there, like just a lot of really celebrities, like some of their kids there because of the alternative way that they teach. It's less about, it's more about the child. It's more focus. There's a lot of art. Like we had like made our own textbooks. Like there were no, hardcover textbooks that you made them. And it was really interesting. And then that's where I definitely struggled, but started to kind of come into my own, I guess, of, again, struggling in school in those early days. But, when I got into high school at that point, at that same school, I really started to enjoy, some of the things I was learning about, and then, getting taught.
And socially, how was that?
So, the intro to that school, I definitely struggled to kind of find my friends or whatever. That it sounds actually funny saying that because our classes were extremely small, like 15 kids. So to say that is maybe kind of ridiculous, but that's same time I started to play music. I was at that school and I met a kid who I ended up starting a band with, still one of my very best friends. He gets to live in Hawaii now. But
you get to visit.
I get to visit. I did last year, which was amazing. But yeah, so I started to find myself socially probably towards like 8th grade. So I'm about to graduate middle school and go into high school, and we're doing tutors. Like I'm still doing the wait till the last minute. Any project that was due, wake up at 5 a.m. to finish it. It was just a mess. And during that time, probably around like 8th grade, was when I started to kind of play around with drugs and alcohol a lot more than I had before. I really hadn't done anything before that.
Drug-wise.
Yeah. And, some of like those first like experiences I had, my parents had a cough medicine that had codeine in it. And I used to like tiptoe downstairs and like pull that out of the cupboard, have a few sips, go back to bed. I remember going on a trip with them to Santa Barbara, and I got to go on that trip because I said I was sick. And I remember getting to Santa Barbara and they're like, cool, like here's some cough medicine. And it was like a Robitussin, like store brand. I had like meltdown because I'd been banking on the fact that like that codeine cough syrup was coming with us, and it had, and I found some friends at the time, like in 8th grade, that like I could like, experiment with and, start to partake and, go down that route of, trying a few different things, and like, started smoking weed. Not that this dates me all that much. I'm not that old, right? But, growing up, like our phones in our houses, like, my parents could pick up the landline while I was talking to somebody. My mom incurred me trying to buy weed from somebody. I was like, what's an eighth? Like, and she picked up like right at that point. I was like so freaked out. My dad was on a trip and he came back, and obviously she told him what had happened. I remember my dad sitting down with me and he was like, make sure it just doesn't become habit. And like that is like, in a nutshell, my experience of active addiction into sobriety, which is, you know, things like the consequences just didn't add up. And I was able, you know, like fast forward down the road, like able to get away with so much. And that's a memory I have because it was like one of those moments, I think, where I could have been reprimanded for that, right? Being a young kid, buying weed.
No consequences.
And that, like, don't make a habit out of it. You know, that's kind of like free reign to continue on.
Well, it's consistent with the younger years.
Yes.
Where you were a friend.
Yeah,
you know,
exactly.
Watch out.
Yeah, it is.
You know, not being the, you know, laying the law down type of dad.
Yeah.
Being the more advisory kind of a role.
Yeah. He definitely was, you know, a very strict parent at times. Like, if you wronged him or, you know, he felt that you didn't appreciate, you know, the things that we were enjoying in our life, that, you know, those were things that would offend it. And, you know, if you were taking advantage, my dad always had a phrase that even, you know, in my 30s, right? Like, don't bite the hand that feeds you. Like, that's like his MO as a dad. And so, yeah, so coming out of like 8th grade, having that social circle, experimenting with drugs and alcohol, getting into high school, 9th grade, really starting to go down into the, you know, the depths of smoking weed and drinking and, you know, trying psychedelics and things like that. And when I'm 16 years old, I just start 10th grade. My birthday's in September, so school starts. My birthday's in a few weeks. My brother, Josh, comes up. He's living in San Diego, and he had a kid with a woman that he wasn't together with. And my brother, Josh, my oldest brother, he struggled as a kid, like living in 2 houses. He went to boarding school. He stole from my parents. He used to love, like, he really experimented with drugs and alcohol. Got kicked out of the boarding school he was in Arizona, had to go to like military school, like really intense.
He was the oldest.
Yes. And like, you know, I got along with him, but I hadn't really gotten close to him. And then when I was in high school and I started playing music, he was a musician, definitely an inspiration, really talented. And he was kind of in this transition phase of his life before this kid comes into the picture, where he's going to India with his mom, and he takes a vow with a Buddhist temple in India, like shaves his head and like takes the rites, and like it's like an incredible like moment that I'm like getting to witness as a kid. He has this child with this woman, and his life starts to turn for the better. And he realizes, like, we're starting to connect now at like age 15. I'm 15. He's, you know, 20, 21. And we start playing music together. And he realizes, like, I don't want to waste another minute of living in San Diego. I'm like getting stoned every day. I want to come up here and like start this band with you. And so he moves up to LA, and he's going to work at my dad's magazine. He's going to work at the front desk. And then at night we'll play music together. And in October of 2001, he comes up, he brings a bunch of his things up, like his amplifier and like his guitar, like some of his things. He's going to go to Arizona to celebrate his son's first birthday and first Halloween, trick-or-treating. And then he's going to come back and he's going to start work on the following Monday at my dad's office. So we're going to kickstart. We had this incredible cheesy moment and we had like a movie theater attached to our house. My dad was super into like film and like all this stuff, and we had a super legit movie theater that I used to practice music in. And my brother's up, we make this super cheesy handshake deal pact that like no matter what, nothing's going to get in our way, we're not going to stop, we're going to go all the way with this. And we shake hands, we hug, we kiss. He leaves for Arizona. 3 days later, he dies. So he is in a car with his 1-year-old son, the mother. They're driving from a party or something. In parallel, there's 2 guys in a high-speed chase with police after opening fire in a club in Phoenix, Arizona. They're coming one way, speeding, chased by the police. My brother's going another direction. the car that these two guys are driving goes airborne and literally slides into my brother's car, killing him instantly. Child, is on life support for a few more days, I'm taken off. And I think Annette, the mother, I think she died at the scene. And
All three gone.
all three.
Oops.
November 1st, 2001. Yeah. And the next morning, I'm getting ready for school, and I'm in the shower, and knock on the door, says, "Hey, can you come out and talk to you?" And by that point, I was pretty used to like every week, like, knock on the door, we need to talk to you. Coming home from school, we need to talk to you. Teacher called, we need to talk to you. Like, I'm getting in trouble left and right in school. And so I'm very, very used to this moment. And the knock comes, I get out of the shower and I'm thinking, what'd I do? Like, I don't know what I've done. I have no excuses because I don't know. And they sit me down, I'm in my towel, and they tell me what happened. And it was obviously I was changed from that moment for the rest of my life. I went to my room, I played some music, and we, it's kind of a blur, I guess, like from that moment to this funeral, which was only like maybe a week or so later. I remember going and seeing him in the funeral home as they were prepping him and all this stuff. He was like in his robes, and this is like the turning point for me in my journey. Like, this is the first moment where I really saw that drugs could change you for the better. And the better for me was escaping out of this emotional moment that was so hard to comprehend as a 16-year-old kid. And what I remember about that time was people being hysterical, his friends that were, at our house for like the wake and like the funeral and all this stuff, and seeing my dad like pass off a few like pills. My dad had a bad back, a lot of surgeries, so there were like narcotics in the house like all the time. And this was like early days, like no, just easy, right? And I saw people being hysterical one minute and then being totally at ease the next. And it was just like, I want some of that. And so I started stealing medication from my dad. And I was going through high school. Again, those consequences weren't adding up. I slept all day. Like, taking opiates for me, like, I would stay up all night. It would make me like hyper. And then I would sleep all day in school. And all of my teachers just kind of let me do it because I think they had sympathy for the fact that like I was traumatized from the loss of my brother. Such an insane loss. And I barely graduated high school. I think I had like D+, barely. I had no intention of going to college. I was going to play music. And I just had zero care for anything. I enjoyed getting high. I enjoyed how that felt. And I wanted to do what I wanted. So I graduated high school. I had a potential lucrative career in the music industry. I had a column in my dad's magazine that was actually successful, where I would interview bands that I liked, or indie bands, indie record labels. It was kind of like the movie Almost Famous. Nobody knew I was in high school. So I was going to like these like openings to these clothing stores. I was walking into record company offices and getting tickets to go see a band and interview the artist that night. And nobody knew I was like 17. It was amazing. And my dad used to come to some of these shows with a camera, kind of like this, and film me interviewing the bands. It was really cool. It was a really cool time. And I could have gone down that route. I'm sure that it would have led to a life of success doing that. But I wanted to play music. I was in a band, and I wanted to go on the road and tour and be successful playing music in front of people live. I didn't want to be behind a computer writing. And so I gave up this potential avenue of success, got in a van with my best friends, started touring the country. Those were the times when I would dry out. So I was still living at home with my dad and my mom, stealing medication from my dad. And then I'd go on the road, I'd dry out, I'd detox for like 2 days, and sweat it out and then come home and do it all over again.
So the withdrawal was pretty intense?
It was like super easy.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it was like 1 to 2 days, sweat it out, and kind of be on my way. Obviously I was, getting carried through that by alcohol, and we didn't really drink the first time we went out on the road, but the second time my drummer had turned 21, so he could buy alcohol for us. And I almost didn't make the second big tour that we had in 2006 because my parents finally figured out that I was stealing medication. So I always talk about this, like in my qualifications, like I got high off of stealing because I would like snake into the room. I knew where the floors would creak and I would like scale the wall into my dad's bathroom, take the pills, turn it a certain way, like tilt it so that one side looked fuller. So if you opened up the medicine cabinet, it looked like a full bottle, but it really wasn't. Like I was, it was very intentional. And they, the painters are taking it. The cleaning lady's taking it. They would be at each other thinking they were, either one of them were abusing that. And then finally they thought, could it be Max? And they counted the pills. And I came home one night and I took what I took, and there's like this weird like sixth sense that like I've gotten, and I know like other people, like sober people, have gotten before, where like when something's about to go down. It's really strange. You would think at that moment that like you would acknowledge it and stop what you're doing, but no, of course you don't. You just keep going.
Yeah, you have to
You're fully committed.
You go the other way.
Yeah, and I knew something was going to happen. My brother was back. I think he was living after college for like a year at my parents' house, working in LA. And he came into my room and he like knocked on the door and he was like, I need to talk to you. And he's like, Mom and Dad know what you've done, and they're waiting downstairs for you to come and talk to them. And like, I was 19 years old and I felt like the littlest kid. I came downstairs, and this is in like, again, the end of 2005, so winter time. And I come downstairs, I sit in front of them, they're like, we know you've been stealing medication. And my dad, like, obviously he cared about me, cared about my health and what I was doing, but he was really bent out of shape that I was stealing from him. And again, it's that you don't bite the hand that feeds you. And I sat there and I cried, my alligator tears about like, I'll do better. I can make this better and blah, 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 blah. They're like, no, like you need serious help. So they said I had to go to rehab. And my mom and I went to visit all of these rehabs in LA. And, I had a few different experiences doing this with her. One of them was sitting next to her, filling out like the questionnaire of like, what have you tried? And there's like 40 different things with all the boxes. I start checking all the boxes off, and I'm like looking at her and I'm like giving her a nudge, like, look at all these things I'm checking off, basically taking my victory lap and not thinking that this is horrifying for her. And I'm just rubbing her face in it right now. Didn't care enough to even think about her in all of this. And I remember thinking like having a super resentment towards them about like, if I'm going to go to rehab, I'm going to do it. I'm going to stay here. I'm going to show you guys. And again, just like my thinking was so warped. And the last place we went to was the Tarzan Treatment Center, which was like county run. It wasn't pretty. They had fluorescent lights that were like, like real, yellow stained walls. Yeah. We used to go to this place when I was a kid and give toys and clothing to the long-term like inpatient families. It was something like my dad, it's one of the gifts my dad gave me as a kid that I still have, is like sharing, like share your wealth, share it all, and we used to bring the toys to this place, and the people that were doing this intake knew the truth. They could see it, that like I was in trouble, and they were just so brutally honest with my mom and I, like, he needs to come in now. We need to take him now. And she's like, well, we don't have a backpack, but they're like, we'll get up close. Like, we'll take care of it. Like he needs to come now. And that scared the living shit out of me. Sorry if I can't curse on this, but
No shit, we're not allowed to say.
okay, I won't do that again.
Yeah.
I was like, can we take a minute to my mom? And we go outside and I was like, what are you doing? What are you doing right now? Like, this is moving way too fast for me. I'm like, I can do this. Like, let me do this. I was able to like convince her that I could do it on my own. And so I went home. I didn't go to Tarzana. I went home. I read Augustin Burroughs' Dry, and I like sweated it out for like 4 or 5 days. They took me to the doctor. The doctor said, surprisingly, he's fine. He's okay. And I told my bandmates, I don't think I'm going to be able to go on tour. And I ended up going on the tour in 2006. And no pills, none of that, no smoking weed, but a ton of drinking. I couldn't go on stage without having like at least like a quarter of like Jack Daniels every night. And like, it was the time of my life, but I also blacked out a bunch. There's like a picture of me in Florida in Satellite Beach with like the band, people that played the show, the promoters outside of the club. And I'm on the pavement, like sprawled out long, and everybody's like taking the group photo. And we go to play a show in Alabama, in Birmingham. We get to a motel that night. In the morning, our van and trailer is missing. Gone. And that's how that tour ends. And that band, ultimately. So I came back to LA. I was committed to not doing pills. And I think it's important. There's a memory I have of this period where I was like, I'm not smoking cigarettes. I'm not doing pills. I'm not drinking. Like, I'm taking it seriously. I'm not going to meetings. I've never been to a meeting. AA was something I think I knew about, but nothing I had explored. And I told my dad, I was like, I'm not doing any of this stuff. He's like, cool, well, we're having a party, this weekend, and we're going to open some bottles of wine. Like, you're going to have a little wine though, right? And it's just like, no malice, no harm thinking there, just not educated in sobriety in the way that I think I needed that support at that time. And, I had the wine, I did the whole thing. Like, I that wasn't necessarily like my relapse, but it wasn't, I still drank. Like, drinking was a thing I did at that point. I ended up moving in with a girl in Hollywood, kept drinking, started drinking at things that I was happy about. And at this period for a few years, like, I'm just drinking a lot. Whiskey, love Jameson whiskey, drink it out of the bottle. I had this really interesting phenomenon where if I got hungover and I threw up, I ended up feeling euphoric after. And so when I become hungover, I was excited about it because I knew the euphoria was coming later. And I would get it. I was like, today's going to be the best day of my life. I don't know if that's a normal way of thinking when you're hungover. I feel like maybe you think...
I actually haven't heard that. Yeah, I've never heard that either.
Yeah, it's really weird. Yeah, I would feel...
So what age are you now?
I'm like 23.
And so at 23, you're drinking a lot. You're not doing any drugs.
No.
And you're not really getting any kind of input, any direction, no meetings, no rehab, no what.
No.
So how long did this go on?
This went on for maybe another year. I'm... to supplement my blossoming music career, I'm working in restaurants as a waiter, like a lot of musicians, right? And I'm having drinks with people after work and doing all of that. On a particular Sunday, I go to a bottomless brunch. I ended up meeting a guy that I worked with, hands me a pill, and that's just basically me off to the races. And
so this is at the brunch, he gives you pills?
This is me at work. Work 5 hours later.
Okay.
So I came into work anyways. And at that point, I knew where I could get it. I didn't have to steal it. And I was totally off to the races. This
is the first time that you've had pills
in a few years. Yeah.
Since you're 19?
Yeah. And so I start like obsessing, seeing this guy like every weekend. He becomes my primary like drug dealer. And I'm at his place left and right buying from him.
He's a guy from work?
Yeah. And basically, again, every weekend, I'm the annoying guy that's like, you tell me, yeah, come by my place at 3. I'm there at 1. If you're sleeping, I'm there till 8. You're like, I'll leave, but I'll come right back. Oh, you're up? I'll come right, like, just like insane. Absolutely nuts. And I start hanging out with him, and he introduces me after like 8 months to heroin, and start using that with him. And his family basically sends him to rehab. I'm like, this is like 26, 27 now, and sends him to rehab. And this should have been the moment that the light went off, or light went on, if you will. The moment where I reflected and realized that I'm running hard with this guy. Like, we're trading pills with cancer patients for, like, what do they have? We'll give them what we have, like, really nasty stuff. And instead of being like, wow, you're going to rehab, like, maybe I need to think about going myself. My follow-up to him was, why don't you give me the number to your dealer? And, like, good luck to you.
So you didn't need him anymore, and you just picked up the ball where he left.
Yeah. Now I get to go right to the source. And I'm still working in restaurants. By this time, I'm living with my dad in Malibu. And I'm still stealing from him while I'm buying, like, a mess. My dad...
What are you stealing?
I'm stealing Norcos and Valiums and buying the same stuff from this other guy. I was using so much at that point that, like, I couldn't stay in stock of what I needed. Between the two of them, I was still, I was either high or sick. And the withdrawals at that point were no longer 1 to 2 days. They were eternity. And going to work sick is one of the most darkest, painful experiences I could have. And I'm living with my dad. He finds out he has a torn aorta and, is worried he's going to have a heart attack and die. And he sees how miserable I am working in this restaurant that he decides, you know what, why don't you work for me full time? I'll pay you. And you don't have to work in the restaurant anymore. And I think he really just liked having me around. And so I had this, like, endless stream of money coming in from him. I also lied to the state of California and told them that I had been fired and I was collecting unemployment. So I had this, like, nice stream of money coming in, and I would just go right to this guy and just blow all my dough. And my dad, again, starts to, knows I'm stealing from him, but isn't really making a big deal about it. I'm starting to really go down a dark path. Like I said, I'm using heroin. I'm doing coke. Like, my car was falling apart. Like, I got in my car one day and I was driving down this hill very slowly, and I put my foot on the brake and the pedal hit the floor. I had blown, like, the brake line fluid thing or whatever into my car because I wasn't taking my car for its changes, for its checkups.
Right.
Like, I was getting, like, I'd blow through my brakes. Like, I was all this crazy stuff. My car used to make this terrible screeching sound. And I would hear that sound while I was going to buy drugs. Like, I just didn't care. I needed what I needed. My license expired. My registration expired. And I was still driving around. I had a broken taillight. Like, still driving around bike drugs.
So the only thing at that point that hadn't expired is you.
Yeah, exactly. Was my habit.
That was coming, though.
Yeah. So I get to this place. This is my last few months before leaving LA to move to New York. I come up with this idea that I'm going to come to New York and I'm going to make all my dreams come true. I'm going to do something in music I've never done before, and I'm going to be super successful, and my life is going to take off, and it's going to be amazing. I'm at one of my darkest moments in my life during this idea coming about.
You just heard what a geographic is. You don't know what it is?
100%. Yeah, 100%. And at the same time, I decide that I'm tired of hiding who I am. I'm a very satisfied drug user, and I love my life. And if people want to be around me, or people are truly my friends, they'll accept it and they'll be okay with it and they'll love me for who I am. So that means I stop hiding the drug use. I stop hiding, going in a corner, going outside, and I just start doing it all out in the open. And you know what? Nobody thought it was okay. nobody thought what I was doing was, living up to what they thought my full potential.
Who was the nobody at this point?
All of my best friends. So anybody close to me, not necessarily my dad and my mom yet, because I'm really good at lying to them. But my relationships are starting to fall apart with that. And I'm not around to support my dad when he needed me. I was really aggressive with him at discussion. You couldn't talk to me. You couldn't tell me anything that was, sincere, or if you weren't happy about something, because I immediately put my finger up and pointed back at you and told you what a terrible person you are. Stop talking to my mom. But with my friends and, the people that I was hanging out with, they just stopped hanging out with me. But then I started posting things on Facebook. I'd be up for like 5 or 6 days and I'd be posting it on Facebook. Every year, when they do the memories on Facebook, there's a period where it comes up and I see 10 years ago now, like, staying at 6 days, going on for 7. And I'm just like, oh man, people were knocking on my door because they'd see that and they'd be like, are you okay? And I'd be like, what are you talking about? I look like a raccoon. My eyes were black. And I'd just be like, yeah, everything's great. How are you? Thanks for coming up here. Like, I lived in the mountains of Malibu. And I moved with my dad out of this house. This is where I come to New York. I moved with my dad out of this house into this apartment in Woodland Hills, California. I'm an absolute wreck. And my best friend, my brother from another mother, calls me up and he's like, I can't be friends with you. I can't have any association with you. I don't believe in anything you're doing, and I don't want to have anything to do with you. And again, another moment, right? To stop what I'm doing, realize where I'm at, and say I need help. And my response to him is, great, well, good luck to you and wherever you're going, and it's been fun. And I moved to New York. I moved to New York with $50 in my pocket. When you move somewhere, right, you do a big geographic, you save up money, you have a plan, you know where you're going, you have a job, maybe money saved up. Not me.
I bet you had some things to use.
Well, I had a car that I sold to my drug dealer.
No drugs? You didn't go with any to get high? No. $50 in your pocket, and you were going to be in withdrawal?
Yes.
Wow.
Yeah. Because I wasn't a plan. If I had it, I used it. And then I had to figure it out. I would always figure it out.
Like in school? Yeah, cramming at the end.
Of course. I always figured it out.
Got it.
And my mom took me to the airport and she said, how much money do you have? And I think about this now because a big move like that, your mom or your parent or your sibling or your friend isn't asking you how much money you have. I live on a friend's couch. I get off the plane. I tell them I'm not doing coke anymore. And within 2 hours, I am. And I basically, like, any person that put their hand out for me that said, I'll help you, I burn that bridge. I was bartending and in Brooklyn, I wanted to be manager. I worked really hard to be manager. I was doing really well with not doing really anything super hard. And I find a guy that can sell me pills back into heroin. And I start to find myself with like little money. And, I used to be able to steal from my parents, from my dad. I had that money, that income from him that he was paying me. And I find out on my own, right, that doesn't exist anymore. So I have to supplement somewhere. Oh, the cash register at work. That's a good place to start taking money out of. So I start stealing money out of the cash register at the bar I'm working at, putting back my tips at the end of the night. All of a sudden I'm using so much that it's not just my tips anymore, it's other people's tips. So literally stealing money from everyone. They catch me because one night I'm not able to put any money back in their register. And they bring me into the bar the next day and they're like, they put it all out on the table. And they actually say to me, if you go to rehab and you come back, we might be able to like salvage this opportunity and give you, make space for you. And I literally was offended. I was just like, how dare you? Like, I didn't care about the stealing of the money. Obviously I was doing that, but don't call me an addict. I'm not that. I'm not a junkie. That's not me. although everybody around me saw me nodding out at the bar. And I got fired from there. I told my parents that I quit. They weren't treating me right, all this stuff. I think they knew it was BS and that they could see through it, but they were supporting me. The guy I was living with, I said, I'm not going to pay rent. And I left and I couch surfed for a while. And after leaving that bar, I got fired from 5 jobs in 30 days. I lasted 1 year in New York City on my own, my way. And on the day that was my 1 year anniversary, I was in a taxi cab. I'd gotten kicked out of the place I was living in. All my clothes were in a trash bag. And I was driving to, somebody that said I could crash on their couch. And I remember thinking, this isn't how I thought my first year in New York City was going to go. My brother, who's also living in New York City, my older brother, Michael, he's watching me just deplete. He's watching my life go down the drain. He's doing everything he can to help me. He's letting me borrow money. He's helping me get jobs. He's putting his hand out left and right. And all I keep doing is spitting in his face. And he's in LA while I'm getting fired from the last job I had before getting sober. He's in LA with his fiance and they're looking at wedding venues, Santa Barbara, etc. And before they leave, they have a conversation with my parents. We're divorced by this point. And basically each one of them reveals a secret, something they've been hiding to protect me. I've been giving him money. I've seen him do drugs. He was stealing from me, so on and so forth. And they realize in this moment that I'm not only a drug addict, but I'm tearing up my life. I'm burning it all to the ground and I'm going to die. And they realize this. And then this horrifying fact, they're all together in LA and I'm in New York City alone. My brother jumps on the plane, flies back to New York, checks in, how are you doing? I literally got fired 12 hours before that. I'm like, I just got fired from this job. Don't tell mom and dad, I can't deal with the stress. He says, tonight I'm taking you to dinner, no ifs. I'm going to come pick you up at 5 o'clock. Takes me to dinner in Brooklyn. And I can't remember the conversation except for the one question, do you want to go to rehab? And all of those moments, all of the opportunities that I had gotten up to this point, every time I could put my hand up and said I need help, I wasn't ready to see myself, who I truly was. And when he asked me this question, I stopped. However short it really was, in my head, it was a long time. I thought about what my life looked like at that point, and all I could think about was that I'd been here before. This feeling that I was just repeating, it was like Groundhog Day for me. And I said, yes. He said, great, we're going to send you to this place called CARE in Pennsylvania. Sorry, it's emotional to think about. Michael tells me, Dad's gotten in touch with this guy, Neil Lasher, and he's going to help you get to CARE. I was like, great, I don't know who Neil is, but, whatever, thanks, right? I find out that he is this old industry guy that my dad knew him before he got sober, and my dad's best friend got Neil into treatment, convinced Neil to go to treatment. And my dad called his best friend, and his best friend said, you got to call Neil, it'll help Max out. So it takes about a week. I get into caring. I show up and I think I know exactly what I have to do. I knew why I was there. I was totally coherent. I knew I was an addict. I knew that, I had a problem and that my best thinking could fix me now. So I wasn't trying to give excuses, but I knew exactly what I had to do. I had it all figured out. I'll just do the opposite of what I was doing on the outside. And the therapists and the people there were like, no, that's not what you do. And I really it took me a week for them to really get in my head. And what I really had to do was do nothing, to just stop everything. And when I finally slowed down, something amazing happened. I asked, well, what do I do next? They were like, you can participate. And I was like, okay, cool. And from there came the next thought. What else can I do? I can make my bed. I can have a meal. I can introduce routine into my life. And I started putting my hand up back here. We would go off site for the meetings and they'd say, these old timer meetings that, take the cotton out of your ears and put it in your mouth. Like these guys, they're like, who's going to clean the coffee pot? And my hand would just like shoot up. You know, I wasn't trying to be a brown noser in sobriety or in rehab. I was just, something in me was like, I got to do this. And my mom came for the family program, and it was the first time that like we really listened to each other. So this amazing opportunity comes my way after so many years of just hurting myself, and something changes in me in this place in the sticks in Pennsylvania. And I start to appreciate and let people love me before I could love myself. I got to hear Father Bill. I got to experience that. And I got to, you know, just slow down and take in what was happening and appreciate it. All I was interested in was letting these people tell me what to do. Like I was totally done. I'd arrested the desire to be in the driver's seat because I was feeling better every day. And it wasn't because of what I was doing. It was because of, I was just following direction. So they said that they recommended that I come back to New York City. This is in 2014. That I come back to New York City and I go to sober living in New York City. This guy comes up from the sober living to talk to me. His name's Zach Clark. He's sitting in front of me. He's wearing a suit. He says, "Don't be fooled by the suit. I'm a raging drug addict." I'm like, okay, cool. Like, I like this guy already. I end up going to this sober living in New York City and called Serenity at the time. And I meet these two guys, Justin and Zach. And Justin sits down with me on day one. He's like, you know, there's just no more money coming in. Like what your family's put out for you is all that you're going to get. And you need to get a job like tomorrow. And he's like, there's a coffee shop opening up around the corner. And I'm like, I can't do it. I was like, I know it's not a bar, but I don't want to be in that environment. I knew that being in the service industry, being just in that space was just not right for me. And he's like, well, what do you want to do? I said, I don't know what I want to do, but I know what I don't. And I was like, I want like maybe like 9 to 5, like a paycheck. I want weekends off that I don't have to ask for. And he's like, well, go to like a temp agency. So I go to a temp agency. I end up getting an opportunity at this men's clothing company in New York City while I'm in the sober living house, going to meetings, find a sponsor, all of that, and end up getting this like 2-week gig to work at the front desk. So I'm living in a sober house now. I'm going to a meeting every day. I'm going to an AA meeting, by the way. I'm an NA guy. I'm a narcotics guy. I'm a drug user. I'm not alcoholic.
So you're listening to a speaker from Karen, who's an AA speaker.
Yep.
And he said one size fits all isn't the thing.
He was telling a story about a woman that he knew, and like the way he was describing her alcoholism, and it was not the guy living on the street. It was a completely different story. And what it did was it gave me the opportunity to think about my own life and to think about my own drinking career and realize that just because my story isn't like this person's doesn't mean that I'm not an alcoholic. And it gave me the freedom to actually explore that reality, which was absolutely correct. I was an alcoholic.
Right.
And so after that moment at Karen, it was like, I'm an addict and an alcoholic. And when I got to New York, my dad, again, it's very funny in hindsight, for my birthday in sober living, because I got out in August, he was like, I'm going to send you some money, go to a steakhouse, take anybody you want with you. He's like, but I got to tell you something. You can't drink because you can't drink. And I'm like, are you telling me this because I'm in the sober house or because I'm an alcoholic? He's like, because you're in the sober house. And I was just like, you don't get it, you know? It's like, I am an alcoholic, right? And I can't do that. I can't do that anymore. And so I'm in the sober living. I get this gig, this 2-week job at a temp agency to go work at this company, this men's clothing company, Bonobos. And this is like day 2. That same night, I go to a meeting. I go to an AA meeting. A guy approaches me as I walk through the door. He's like, do you need a sponsor? And I remember at Karen when I left, I said, what do I do when I leave here? They're like, go to a meeting. Get a sponsor. So the guy approaches me. I don't ask him what that means. I don't say, what does a sponsor mean? What are your credentials? Can I see your resume? What are we going to do? I don't ask any of that because none of it matters. I was told to get this thing And now the opportunity is here and I'm going to say yes. So I said yes. So I'm going to a meeting every day. I'm doing the steps with a sponsor. I'm going to outpatient and I get this job. So like my days are packed. I'm living in the sober house. Nobody else has a job. I'm waking up at 6 a.m, ironing out my shirt. I start my 2-week temp gig and I see something for the first time in my life. People are coming into work and they're happy. And it was intoxicating. I'd never seen somebody walk through the doors with a smile on their face. And I knew I couldn't leave. So I started telling them, I want to be here full time. And what I didn't know is like when you hire somebody from a temp agency, you pay a fee, right? So they're like, we can't even afford you if we wanted you. And this is where life slows down and I realize that I'm changing. Because any other time before that, I would have told them to screw themselves. You don't know how good you have it. I'm the best thing that's ever walked through here, and thrown it all out the window. And I thought, okay, this isn't going to work out the way I wanted to. Why don't I just do the best I can? And maybe I'll get a good referral to another place I go. So I keep showing up. This is over 2 weeks, by the way. Like, it seems like an eternity, but it's such a short amount of time. After the 2 weeks, I'm showing up every day. I'm working harder each day and trying to just own the position, my front desk position, making the coffee, putting up the calendars for the meetings, and just showing up with a smile and trying to be grateful for what I have. They finally say, okay, fine, we're going to interview you for the job. They sit me down and they ask me, what salary you want? And I tell them $20,000 a year. I wanted the job so bad. I didn't really know how salaries worked. I didn't know much about money because I could never hold on to any. I tell them 20 grand and they laugh in my face. They're like, oh yeah, no, we could do that. And I end up getting the job on my birthday while I'm in the sober house. And it's just a beautiful memory because I'm showing up, I'm listening, I'm learning, I'm saying yes to everything I can, and I'm pushing myself beyond anything I ever thought was capable. And I get this job, and I'm so happy. While this happens, I'm not speaking with my brother. I come out of Karen, I reach out to my brother on like day one. Hey, I'm back in the city. Like, thank you for all your support. Like, can't wait to see you. And I get this email from it that basically says, unless you can prove to me and yourself, most importantly, that you can get your life together and actually sustain it, there's no point in us wasting our time trying to have a relationship. So 6 months between now and the time you get out of sober living, and then maybe we can see if there's an opportunity. And it's this incredible email that I still have and sometimes read during my qualifications. So I'm not speaking to my brother yet. Where I work is on 6th Avenue and 25th Street, and he works on 6th Avenue and 26th Street. So we're working around the corner from each other, and we're not speaking. I see people he works with. I never saw him. And I'm starting to cultivate a relationship with my mom through that experience we had at Karen and the family program. We're closer than ever. It's like somebody you went to battle with, like your brother's in arms forever. Like that's how me and my mom were. I wanted to share everything I could with her. Called her every day. She was going to Naranon. She was so supportive, doing her part. My dad, still really tense, but we were getting there. And I leave the sober living. I move into a 1-bedroom apartment in a basement in Brooklyn, in Bushwick, Brooklyn, a half a block away from that first bar that I'm stealing out of the cash register. Everybody's supporting me, living in this neighborhood that I used to get high in. Like, it was just a weird contrast from everything that I remember it being before I got sober to everything now. And I eventually, after like that 6-month period, I get to see my brother in January. And the first opportunity I get to see him, I make amends. Everything about seeing everybody again was about doing it right. And I had this feeling in me that like, you don't often get first chances. For first impressions, and I didn't want to waste the opportunity. And so when I got to see his fiance again after getting sober, they didn't get to get married in California because that money had to go to me, go to Karen. And so I just made every opportunity to see somebody again after getting sober, something special. And I got asked to be best man at my brother's wedding for the second time, and got to make this incredible speech at their wedding, about how the gratitude I had, full of gratitude. And going to meetings, I've got sponsees now. I get to meet this Neil Asher fella and say thank you. I get to go to a meeting with him. He's really supportive of me, the most amazing individual who we both know. And I am kind of showing up a little bit at Karen events, not really doing much. I meet my now wife through OkCupid, so big supporter of OkCupid. She appreciates my sobriety. I remember being out on a date with her, and she told me, I really like speaking with you because I feel like you really listen to me. And like nobody ever told me before that they appreciate being around me because I listen to them. And so I'm picking up on these cues of the change that's happening. It's amazing to feel the change in myself, which I could, but when other people acknowledge it, it's an entirely different story. And I go to my brother's wedding, do the speech, I come back, I start to build a life out with this woman. She comes and sees me get my first year coin, and I end up leaving Bonobos and getting another job at another place that I really wanted to work at. And my life is really kind of like blossoming. And I guess like for me, like the sobriety thing is going really well, but I start to get this desire to do more. Like I've got a service commitment. I got like 3 service commitments, and Zach Clark comes back into my life and he says, we're going to go up to Karen. This is like year 2 or 3. He's like, we're going to go up to Karen. We're going to speak to the patients. And I'm like, oh, cool. And he's like, by the way, we're going to eat in the cafeteria too. And I got super pumped. And I go and I speak to the patients. I go to the cafeteria with Zach, and I'm eating in the cafeteria, and it just, all the memories come back. Father Bill, Pat, the woman that served you food, she'd come to the table and tell you how much she loved you. And just like, this is the first time I've been to Karen since leaving. And I have my first of many of the same experience, which is the second my feet touch the ground at campus, my life resets. No matter where I'm at or what's happening to me, I show up in Warnersville, Pennsylvania, and I get a reset. And the gratitude just floods in. No effort. It's just there. And I tell them, I want to speak here. I want to be the guy that comes on campus. I want to be inspirational. I want to be everything that all these people were. I want to be able to give back. And they're like, you can have the first Sunday out of every month to come speak to patients. I'm living in Brooklyn with my girlfriend, and who's now my wife, and I don't own a car. So I say yes, I'll figure it out. I go to LaGuardia the first Sunday of every month. I rent a car. I drive 3 hours. I speak for an hour. I turn around. I drive 3 hours back, drop the car off at LaGuardia, and go home.
Some of those days, the weather was snowy.
Oh, yeah.
Crazy snow,
Yes.
right?
100%.
I remember when you were awarded a gratitude type award at Karen. I remember hearing you speak, and I remember hearing about the days over and over. And I've actually been in that room speaking, and I know how empowering it is, how gratifying it is to be able to be somebody that comes back to show everybody that's sitting there that there's another way, that it is possible to go from where you are sitting in rehab to being able to have a happy, productive, purposeful life where you feel good when you wake up and your head hits the pillow at night and you're done. And just have a regular, common day, which is absent, which is elusive when we're using an active addiction. You defy somebody who gives back. And I'm fortunate that I didn't know you before this, but I love the Max Fidel. I love you. And you are everything that everything that recovery should and can be. And you do it because you don't take anything for granted. You remember. And it's really a wonderful thing that you're able to recount this. I'm not cutting you short. I want you to finish up. There's much more that you have to say. But it really is so inspiring to see the transformation from somebody who had everything and had nothing to somebody who, by some standards, you don't have what you started with, but you have so much more. It's really incredible that, because we have ourselves, we're building a life. You have a beautiful wife, beautiful family. I don't want to, steal your thunder, but tell us what things look like today.
Yeah, absolutely. So I have moved on in my career to working for a company that's based in the UK. And there's a reason why I say this, because the company values people very much so. So when you first join, after about a month of working there, they do a strengths profile where they ask you a million questions through this questionnaire, and then it spits out all this information. It's really exciting. I love learning about myself. That's something that I learned in sobriety, and I love constructive criticism. The number one strength that I have is gratitude. And I saw that and I was like, that's a bullseye, because that is my life. There's something humbling about going back to Karen. There's something humbling about being in that room and speaking to patients and remembering where I came from. Like that, situations that used to baffle us, right? Where did I come from? I almost died, and to remember that every day is so humbling, so fulfilling, so driving, right? As you mentioned, right? Like I've got a family now. Like I married that woman. I took every opportunity to make that engagement incredible. I threw a surprise engagement party for her after with all of her best friends. Her mom flew out. My mom flew out. Those first impressions, those first impressions, every opportunity to do something awesome. Like if I think about it, like I'll do it, because I know if I don't, I'll regret it. And building a life and relationship with my brother. I had our first daughter when I was like 5 years sober. And her name's Dahlia. She was born here in New York. And she's incredible. And I get to, my kids obviously didn't know me when I wasn't sober, right? But they get to experience and enjoy the gift of sobriety because I get to be there for them. I get to be present. I have a younger daughter named Anna. She's just like me, like as a kid, like, which is exciting and scary all at the same time. But they're incredible reminders of the gifts of this program, because without being sober, without AA, without Karen, without people like yourself, people like Neil Lasher that gave me an opportunity to get sober, to support me, none of my life today would be possible. And today, what's funny is I was in a meeting last week at work, and it was a team meeting, and the vibe in the room was just really low. And I get up to do my bit, and I'm now the guy that like gets up and it's just like, how's everybody doing? And like, I can bring in that gratitude, bring in that thankfulness. And that wasn't who I was before. I got to make amends to all of my friends who told me that they couldn't be around me anymore. And I was able to show back up and tell them how much I love them. And to not just tell them I've changed, but to show it. My brother, when I made those amends to him, he's like, proof is in the pudding. Like he wasn't buying any of the words. He's like, I want to see it. And now almost 10 years later, he has. And my dad, right? Like I got to create an incredible relationship with him through being sober. And he got to witness the evolution of my life again, to see the success in work. I go to like London in the UK, like every 3 months, I just got to go to Paris. Like, I'll say that in 1 second, right? But my dad got to see me become a man. And that was what was important to him, was to see his boys become men, to be responsible. I was in LA a few years ago, and I took him out to dinner. Simple dinner at a restaurant that we liked, a steakhouse in LA. And when the check came, I was like, oh, no, I got it. And like, for my dad in that moment, that's all he ever wanted, was to see his boys become men, to be responsible, to be, self-made and successful and all of that. And to buy him that dinner, and I was like, it's for your birthday, like meant everything to him. He got to see all that. And, a few months ago, and not even 2 months ago, December, my dad ended up in the hospital. I was traveling for work. My brother was in London. I wasn't going to go out to LA. I wasn't going to respond immediately. I said, I'm going to go on this trip to Milwaukee. I get on the plane. I go to Milwaukee. I'm landing and I'm listening to music. You and I were talking earlier about music, right? About music being something super special. And I'm listening to this song, and the lyrics are, do I have to die to hear that you miss me? Do I have to die to hear you say goodbye? And by the time the wheels touch the ground in Milwaukee, I'm already telling my coworkers, like, I'm coming to this meeting with you, but when I leave, I'm going to LA. And I go to LA, I meet my brother who flew in from London, and we got to be with my dad as he passed. And that is a gift of sobriety, you know, to be there for him. The story here, right, starts off with being in Paris at the Ritz and the usual, sir, and the drinks and the cigars. Well, I was in the UK 3 weeks ago, and I took a few extra days, and I went to Paris for my dad. And I went to that bar in the Ritz and had a non-alcoholic beverage. And I got to experience a little bit of the magic that I got to have when I was a kid, but now as a sober, responsible adult. And to be sober so that I could remember him and to appreciate the memories I had with him. And it was a really special trip, and it was a really special time. And yeah, life isn't easy. It's not as hard as it used to be, but it's hard. I'm being responsible and being sober means that, with great power comes great responsibility. You keep taking on more, and it's amazing what I'm capable of today because I know I'm sober, because of what I've been through. And I'm the guy that will go into any conversation you don't want to have because you're worried about a terrible result, and I'll come out with the best thing. I'm not afraid because I talk to drug addicts and alcoholics who are fighting for their lives. I can easily go into a meeting that is uncomfortable, at work, because I'm used to that. I'm used to dealing with that. I literally just started doing transcendental meditation a week ago because I'm almost 10 years sober, and I need to be able to continue evolving, in this sober life. Like, I need a little assistance now. And after a week, it's been really helpful. But yeah, the gratitude I have, that reminder that, I came from nothing. It's hard not to feel like an underdog, because I do, but it's so nurturing for me to go to care, to speak to other alcoholics and addicts, to be around my kids, to just be able to experience life on life's terms, to appreciate the good, the bad, the ugly, to be thankful for all of it, is one of the biggest gifts I get from all of the rough and tumble that I took to get here,
Well, it's interesting. The word that they gave you about you from the UK personality test, gratitude is the single most thing that popped out to them in terms of what you're all about. I would like to add something to that. So the characteristic that I would assign to you, if somebody said, what kind of guy is Max? And what I would tell them is, Max is a kind soul. Kindness is what I guess you'll need. Because every time I've seen you with anybody, that's the feeling I get. And I get that, from you, directly from you to me. And I'm so grateful that you spent an afternoon. I mean, there's a lot of things that you can do, especially with a couple of little kids running around and your wife, and you came from, I don't know how far a drive you came in to be in our little mock studio here in New York City. But I'm grateful for you being here. And I'm so glad that you were able to share your story with our listeners. This was really a great experience, exhilarating. I'm going to have a great day. I had a great day. It's time to stand up. Are you ready to not take a picture of our butts?
Yeah, I'm not going to get you guys to...
Come on, let's go get that.
Thanks, Corey.